we can see that we're making a big difference in this unmet medical need. But what our hope is with Imfinzi and the work that we're doing with Erasmus, Dr. Van Eijck, AstraZeneca, Dr. Holmes, is to extend that runway of survival even further, and perhaps create the opportunity of seeing partial and complete responses destroying the tumor itself, which is something that nobody's ever done.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Virtual Investor What This Means segment. My name is Janine Thomas. I am CEO of JTCIR, and I will be the moderator for today's segment. I am very pleased to be joined by Tom Equels. He is CEO of AIM ImmunoTech, and we are grateful to also be joined by Professor Casper Van Eijck. He is a pancreatic cancer surgeon at Erasmus MC and a consultant for AIM ImmunoTech. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Happy to be here, Janine. Thank you.
Before we get started, I just want to remind AIM is publicly on NYSE American and trades under the ticker AIM. And during today's discussion, the company will be making forward-looking statements, and I encourage everyone to view the company's latest SEC filings on their website at aimimmuno.com for the latest information. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to dive right in. Professor Van Eijck, we're going to start with you. We're so happy to have you with us. And for our audience, can you provide a little bit of your background?
Thank you, Janine. Well, I'm a pancreatic cancer surgeon in Rotterdam at Erasmus in the Netherlands. I was born in Rotterdam as well, and I may be well known because I was the PI, the principal investigator of the DURIPANC first study to study the neoadjuvant therapy in pancreatic cancer. Besides of that, I'm also studying innovative treatments for pancreatic cancer patients because the standard therapies, that don't cure the patients, and actually the currently survival of pancreatic cancer in all stages is still very poor. So the first thing I did was I looked to the prognostic value of the immune system, and that seems to be very, very important. Another aspect we are doing already for several years is that we do what we call immunomonitoring in pancreatic cancer patients in order to see what is happening with the immune system. So that's just briefly my background.
So the reason we're here today is AIM ImmunoTech recently announced that Erasmus Medical Center Safety Committee granted approval to proceed with the phase 2 study of Ampligen and Imfinzi as a potential combination therapy for late-stage pancreatic cancer. Tom, enrollment is expected to commence immediately in the phase 2 portion of this DURIPANC study. To set the stage, can you give investors a quick overview of DURIPANC?
Yes, I'd be happy to, and I'm going to start at the beginning of the relationship. First of all, Professor Dr. Van Eyck is very humble. He is probably one of the most famous and well-respected researchers and surgeons in the area of pancreatic cancer in the world. And our relationship with him was a part of kicking off our introduction of Ampligen as an immunotherapy in pancreatic cancer. So that idea is driven in large part by his genius. And the early access program that we conducted at Erasmus showed a very significant improvement in quality of life, as well as extension of life, progression-free survival, and overall survival, with the sort of super responder subset identified by immune markers achieving median overall survival almost 2 years beyond the standard of care. So these were very important signals, and that was a 57 subject study, which rolled us into the relationship with AstraZeneca and combining Ampligen with their drug durvalumab, trade name Imfinzi. Imfinzi is a checkpoint inhibitor, a PDL1 checkpoint inhibitor. And we, in other studies that we've done combining Ampligen with checkpoint inhibitors, have seen a synergy where you get an impact that's greater than Ampligen alone. So we wanted to see if we could achieve that in pancreatic cancer. And let's recognize what we're talking about here. We're talking about a disease that is so vicious, so lethal, so fast acting that when we talk about a 2 year extension of survival, if you said something could do that 5 or 6 years ago, nobody would believe you. Is that right, Casper?
That's correct. That's correct.
So we're making, we can see that we're making a big difference in this unmet medical need. But what our hope is with Imfinzi and the work that we're doing with Erasmus and Dr. Van Eijck, AstraZeneca, Dr. Holmes, is to extend that runway of survival even further, and perhaps create the opportunity of seeing partial and complete responses destroying the tumor itself, which is something that nobody's ever done. So we look at this as breakthrough type research, and we're working with one of the finest drug companies in the world. AstraZeneca is well respected and known around the world for its innovation in oncology, and of course, as I said, with the top researchers from Erasmus. And Erasmus is one of the most well respected cancer centers, but a premier pancreatic cancer center in Europe. Now, the last thing I'd like to mention is that this is also important from a commercial standpoint. Pancreatic cancer is one of the largest and fastest growing lethal unmet medical needs in the world. In the United States alone, 50,000 people will die or more in 2025 from pancreatic cancer, almost the same number in Europe, 500,000 people worldwide. Now that's a large market, and we've obtained from the European Medicine Agency as well as the FDA an orphan drug designation, which gives us market exclusivity in pancreatic cancer 10 years after drug approval in Europe and 7 years after drug approval in the United States. What that means is the work we're doing, the value is not eroded because patent life expires while you're doing the research. We have exclusivity post drug approval.
Very helpful, Tom. Really appreciate that background. Professor Van Eyck, can you please share your thoughts on the phase one portion of the study?
From a patient point of view, we are very glad that a company like AIM is actually willing to help us in order to find new treatment options for those patients, because a lot of companies doesn't want to burn their fingers on such an aggressive disease, and that from a patient point of view is extremely disappointing. So what we've learned from the phase one study of the DURIPANC is that first of all we had a very quick enrollment because, as Tom said, the medical need is extremely high for those patients. And what we've noticed, which I think is also a very important point, is that we saw in all the patients a real improvement in quality of life. So that means that the treatment itself, the combination treatment itself, improved really the quality of life of those patients. And while these new data are extremely preliminary, it's also encouraging to see that some patients with metastatic pancreas still have stable disease for more than 15 or more months after starting the FOLFIRINOX. That's extremely important to see because normally it's about 6 to 8 months. And including 6 or 7 patients, including the 6 or 7 months of maintenance therapy which the patients had. And what will help us extremely is that by analyzing the blood samples and tumor biopsies taken at different time points, before and after the treatment, we'll obtain crucial insight in several aspects of treatment response, immune dynamics, and tumor evaluation. And that will really make a step forward in the treatment of these patients with such an aggressive disease.
Can you help us understand the rationale for the combination of Imfinzi and Ampligen and what excites you most about the potential here?
As you know, is immune-based therapies have emerged as a promising treatment modalities for very different kind of cancers and also for advanced pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma. And what we found in our early access program, which Tom mentioned already, we showed that Ampligen stands out as a potential candidate since we demonstrated it enhanced the peripheral immune activity at the transcriptome and proteomic levels, especially in patients with metastatic disease. So the observed post-treatment increase in the abundance of what we call type 1 conventional dendritic cells and CD4 T cells, which are extremely important in attacking cancer cells, correlates with significantly improvement of survival. So that's extremely important. And moreover, the distinct immunological signatures characterized by patients with stable disease, showcasing robust activation of dendritic and T cells by Ampligen. So our findings highlighted the immune stimulatory properties associated with toll-like 3 receptor activation through Ampligen, and it provided a rationale for new clinical trials investing the potential synergy between toll-like 3 receptor activation and immune checkpoint inhibitory therapy, like for instance durvalumab, to improve the therapeutic outcome.
Appreciate that, Professor Van Eyck. So, one last question for you. How would you define success in part two of DURIPANC? And do you have any final thoughts you can share with investors?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think it's extremely important that certain companies will also invest in developing new treatment options for patients with, first of all, a very aggressive disease, but also a disease where the incidence is still rising. So it's a real, very important unmet medical need. So, what we expect to find and hope to find is that we will see a significantly prolong of progression-free survival with good quality of life, as I mentioned earlier. That's also important during the treatment. And what I'm sure of is that we get very important information on immune monitoring to further improve the treatment options for the patients with this kind of poor prognosis. So we are very grateful that a company like AIM is willing to help us together with AstraZeneca to further improve the insight in what is happening in those patients with pancreatic cancer. And I'm certain that we will improve the treatment options for those patients by using Ampligen either in combination with durvalumab or with other treatments.
We are very proud to be able to work with Erasmus because um, uh, while it's true that many companies wouldn't move into this space because the chances of success are low, we had a belief in our product. But more importantly, the team at Erasmus and Dr. Van Eyck had a belief in Ampligen, and we realized that in a way we're doing God's work here because we're saving people's lives. This is not something that should be overlooked. Obviously there are commercial implications because it's a huge market and unmet medical need. But we know right now that we're having an impact on the lives of these subjects that's very positive, improving their quality of life, extending their life. And really, that's what, our work is all about. If we can find an unmet medical need and help people to a better future, that's our goal. Our motto is immunology for a better future. And we know we're making a difference working with Professor Van Eyck and Erasmus and seeing the results that we're seeing.
Gentlemen, what important work you are doing, and you're giving hope to patients and their families and just the pancreatic cancer community as a whole. So congratulations and thank you for your commitment in this area. Tom, one last question here. What are the next steps and milestones related to this important study?
It's our intention to move forward with enrollment in the phase two. Our successes in the early access program are well known, I think, in Europe in the pancreatic cancer community. So, whereas in many areas, accrual of patients is a big problem in a pancreatic cancer trial, in this particular instance, they're lined up to get in. So we think that we're going to see that phase two kick off quickly, and we're going to see enrollment at a rate that's very vigorous, especially in late stage pancreatic cancer.
So, Tom, you mentioned enrollment and the fast paced enrollment that you're expected, but I know that enrollment sometimes is challenging in clinical studies. Professor Van Eyck, could you give us insight into your thoughts on how this study will get enrolled?
It's very important to notice that our work has not only been appreciated by the patients, but also by the scientific community, since we have several publications in high impact journals, which actually shows that there is a lot of interest, and also from a scientific point of view, what we are actually doing with those patients, especially by monitoring those patients so rigorously. By knowing that, I think we are not afraid of the enrollment of the patients in the studies, because the medical need is that high that uh, because we are doing such a well respected work, that the enrollment will not be a problem for these studies. And that's also what we have seen already in the phase 1 study.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, appreciate all of your insight today. I wish we had more time in keeping this conversation going, and we're definitely going to look to have you back on our virtual investor platform. And with that, this concludes AIM ImmunoTech's What This Means segment. I'd like to thank Professor Van Eyck and Tom Equels for joining us, and I'd also like to thank our audience for your time and attention. And if you like what you saw today, I encourage you to visit AIM's website at aimimmuno.com, as well as follow their social channels on X, LinkedIn, and Facebook to stay current on the latest information. And you can also visit the Virtual Investor Events platform at virtualinvestorco.com. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and wish you a great rest of your day.